Alright, let's start modding in 121 with Forge. 121 Minecraft modding course is available down below, with over 11 hours of content covering everything from the basics all the way to block entities and custom mobs. Alright, and we find ourselves back once again, this time starting to mod with Minecraft Forge in 121. It's going to be pretty freaking insane, and there's quite a few things to do, so let's see. And as always, we're going to start at the very beginning. If you have no idea about modding or anything basically when it comes to how to make a Minecraft mod or even programming, then this is probably a good place to start. I'll break it down. We'll go through the setup, right? Basically so that you have a project that you can then start with and start modding Minecraft with. But first of all, we need to download a couple of things, and you can also see there is a bit of an in-depth tutorial in this case, right? It is a little bit involved. There's quite a few steps that we need to go through, and each of them have to be taken carefully, so you will have to take a little bit of time here, especially in this first setup tutorial. But when you have that, then it is absolutely amazing, and modding is going to be so much fun. 121 is crazy. The first thing you need for modding Minecraft is you need a JDK or Java development kit. I basically always recommend the Eclipse Tamarin right here because that one has never failed me before. I've seen a couple of others that have some weird quirks. That is why I basically suggest this one. In Minecraft 121, we have to take the JDK version 21 over here, the LTS version, make sure that the package type is on JDK, and then you can download it for whatever, well, operating system and architecture you're using. In my case, I am using Windows, and this is exactly the right thing. So here in my case, I'm going to download the MSI. This is just simply an installer, and then once it is downloaded, literally, you can simply install this onto your PC like any other program. One tiny caveat is very important, and that is when you're right here, make sure that the set or override Java home variable will be installed on local hard drive. That is extremely important. If we set this, then it's just going to be way easier down the line when we are actually modding Minecraft, when we're inside of IntelliJ. So keep that in mind, then just hit next and install onto your PC like any other program. There we go, the JDK is successfully installed, and we can move on to IntelliJ IDEA. Now, IntelliJ IDEA is an IDE or integrated development environment. It is basically a fancy text editor allowing us to actually create Java programs basically, which modding Minecraft is basically a Java program. Now, this is extremely important. Hopefully you haven't clicked anything yet, because with the link in the description below, on IntelliJ, you can of course choose Windows, macOS, or Linux, and then you have to scroll down to the community version. If I read any comment that, oh, Ultimate costs something, yes, this is why I've specifically said on the JetBrains IntelliJ IDEA download website, scroll down until you find the IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition. This one is free and built on open source. This is going to be more than enough that we need. We do not need the Ultimate Edition. That is, basically all of the different things that the Ultimate Edition gives us is overkill for everything we're trying to do here. So, once again, scroll down to the IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition, hit download right here, and then you know that it's the right thing that you've downloaded when the name of it is called Ideal C for community in this case, right? So Ideal C is the community edition, and then you're good to go. The same thing applies here. Simply install this onto your PC like any other program. And we'll start IntelliJ for the first time in just a second, but the first thing I want to do is I want to appeal a little bit for some Java knowledge. So, of course, Minecraft Java Edition requires some Java knowledge. And absolutely, we're always happy when new beginners start modding Minecraft. It is always an exciting time because it is really a cool hobby and possibly even, you know, a little bit of a side hustle, all of that. It's all possible. However, one thing is very important, and that is if you're actually serious and you're like, you know, I actually really want to get into Minecraft modding, then there is no way around getting into some amount of Java, okay? Now, yes, you'll be able to follow my steps right here to set up the project. That's absolutely correct. You will be maybe even able to add some items and add a block. But if you're just typing out everything that I write and you're not understanding some of the underlying structures, right, that are below it when it comes to Java, you're just never going to get very far along. That is why I have this Java introduction over here for Minecraft modding. It's a great playlist. In this case, I'm still using JDK 17 in the playlist right here, but it doesn't matter that much. The differences are minute at best. it is a great place to start. You can, of course, also start with any other Java introduction that exists on YouTube. There are so many on YouTube. It is actually crazy. So feel free to, peruse that, of course, and then maybe either come back or do this in parallel, right? Learn a little bit of Java, learn a little bit of modding, like sort of at the side, and then you're pretty much going to be good to go. I basically want to make sure that you understand you will need Java if you want to do this in any serious way, shape, or form, so keep that in mind. But if you're already intermediate at Java, well, then you're good to go. And for all the rest, well, we can proceed to actually downloading Forge over here. So this is going to be the MDK. This is, of course, going to be linked down below, and you can simply hit MDK. You will see a big advertisement over here. Any download button there is not correct. You want to look at the top right corner. You have to wait for 5 seconds, and then there is a skip button. This is the only correct button you have to press over here. None of the other ones basically are supposed to be used. So click the skip button, and then the MDK will download. Now I've already prepared this right here. So I'm simply going to right-click, drag this, and then extract. And I'm going to extract this to Forge-tutorial-121x. There you go. And going into this, you can, in theory, delete all of the text files over here, changelog, credits, license, and readme. Those are specific for the Forge project, and they aren't specifically for your own project. With that done, we want to copy the directory structure over here, and then we want to start IntelliJ for the first time. Starting IntelliJ for the first time will get you something akin to this. It's going to look a little bit different, but what you will have is 3 buttons: the new project button, the open button, and the get from VCS button. You will use the open button. And then we will simply paste in what we just copied over right here. And there we go. We can then select OK, trust project, and a new window will open and things will start happening. The first thing you must realize is that just let this run through. At the bottom left corner, you can see the little hammer here with the green dot. This basically means it's going to start downloading things, it's going to start setting up things, and basically preparing our project. Simply let this run through, be patient, and wait until you either get a build failed or a build successful. Any warnings, any errors you get are sort of irrelevant for us. The only thing that matters for us right now is whether or not we get a build failed or a build successful. And there we go, we get a build successful in 38 seconds. That's awesome. It might take a little bit longer, and that is fine. As long as you get a build successful, any other things like these warnings over here, matching copy action, can all be ignored. As long as you have a build successful, you're good to go. If you did get a build fail, there are a couple of things that you can double check. On the top left corner, you can go to the project structure right here. Make sure that under project, the SDK is set to 21 and the language level is also set to 21. If you double check that, you can also go to settings, then build execution deployment, build tools, Gradle, and make sure that the Gradle JVM is also set to 21, whether or not that is via the Java home variable, whether or not that is via the project SDK, or you set it manually, doesn't matter. The most important thing is that this is also JDK 21. If you basically double check that, then you can go to the top right over here to the little elephant Gradle, and you can reload all Gradle projects, and that is going to then hopefully lead to a build successful. Now, if you're using this for the first time, if you're expanding the project right here, you can see that you will probably have a com.example.example mod. I want to reshape this just a little bit because personally, I basically worked with this a little bit differently. So at the top right here on the options, we're going to go to tree appearance, and then we're going to make sure that both flatten packages as well as compact middle packages is turned off. And then the general view, or the general way that everything looks, is going to be exactly the same as I have it. Then we're going to double click the example mod, which is going to open this class, and a lot of stuff is going to be thrown your way. The first thing is take a deep breath. Calm down. All of this will be explained in due time, but for now we want to first of all actually do a few modifications over here, so in order to set this up so that we can then use it going forward. The first thing we want to do is at the very top over here on the package, we want to click on this, press Shift F6, and we want to change the entire packet structure name. In my case, I'm going to do net.kaupenjoe.tutorialmod. What you would do is net or de or ch or com dot and then your name. Do know that this is going to be public, so if you use your full name, then that might not be ideal, right? But if you're named John, for example, you could do com.john.tutorialmod. And we will hit refactor, and then you can see on the left side, once again, our project structure. We now have moved both the config as well as the example mod classes to net Kaupenjoe tutorial mod. So now I can take the com right here and simply delete it. and our new structure is now set. That would be step 1. Then inside of the class itself, I'm going to delete a couple of things and move things around a little bit. Now, all of the code after it's done, well, basically being reformatted, is going to be available to you. So if at any time you're like, oh, I might have deleted something more, right? And then all of a sudden there's a lot of red in your class, absolutely no worries. That is totally fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything below the logger over here and I'm going to delete it. Now, these are already example blocks, example items, right? An example creative mode tab. Why do I delete this? We're going to add all of this individually. Now, of course, if you want to, you can take what is already there, try to understand it. How does this work? How is this being used? Absolutely no worries, but that's not the point. The point here is that I want to set it up in a little bit of a different way, but of course, you can use those examples and try to understand those too. Now, in the constructor over here, of course, now we're getting a couple of errors. No worries there at all. That is going to be totally fine. And like I said, I'm just going to reformat this a little bit. Same with a couple of the methods. I'm going to keep all of the methods in here, but I'm going to basically empty them out and reformat them a little bit, right? So I'm going to keep the comment setup method. I'm going to keep the app creative method. All of those are going to be kept over here. I'm just going to reformat this the tiniest bit. There you go. And then basically now at the end over here, we're going to have round about 75 to 78 lines in this entire class. Once again, you can double check the entire class down below in the GitHub repository so that there's basically no issues at all. Worst case scenario, you can simply copy it over and then you should be good to go. That is, of course, if you are actually running into any issues. We're also going to make the logger public right here. That's just going to help us a little bit. We're going to change the name of the mod ID to, so we're going to click on this, press Shift F6, and we're simply going to change this to mod_ID. Then in the example mod, right, so public class example mod, that's the name of the class. We're going to click on this, press Shift F6 again, and then we can simply start typing, and we're going to call this tutorial mod. Notice that the T and the M are uppercase. That is simply Java conventions for class names. And then we get to probably the most important thing in this whole ordeal, and that is our mod ID. Currently, as you can see, it is called example mod. That is not tenable. We want to call this tutorial mod. That is going to be our mod ID. Now, the mod ID has very important restrictions. It can only contain lowercase characters. It cannot contain any spaces. And I believe numbers are okay, but honestly, just make sure that it is all lowercase. And if you do want it, I believe that underscores do work, but dashes should not. Don't overcomplicate it. This is internal. The player is never really going to interface with this too much. Do make sure that this is a unique ID, right? Because this is your unique modifier for your mod, right? So if you had Bob's building mod, right? BBM would be, that's a little bit, that's not quite enough, right? If you do Bob's buildings, that would be amazing, right? I think that would already be, that would suffice in this case. So make it long enough so that it's good and unique. And of course, be cognizant of the restrictions. Now, this is not the only place where we need to do this. Where we also need to do this is in the Gradle properties file over here. And we want to scroll down to the mod properties. Here, we also have to change it to the exact same mod ID. If those two do not match, then you will run into issues. So keep that in mind. Then here we have the human readable display. This is just tutorial mod. My license I'm going to use is the MIT license, not IMT, but the MIT license. The version here is just going to be 0.01. The group ID, well, that is the thing that we've literally just made, net Kaupenjoe tutorial mod, right? So this is going to be our structure right here for our packages. The author is, crazily enough, Kaupenjoe, and the mod description is just going to be a tutorial mod by Kaupenjoe for YouTube. And there we go. That is going to be fine. There's one more important thing we want to change, and that is the mappings. So mappings, highest level overview is what are the names of classes, what are the names of methods, and things like that. And in this case, the official mappings, that's all fine and well, but we want to use Parchment mappings. Why do we want to do that? Because when you are using the official mappings, then all of your parameters are called P underscore and then a bunch of numbers. And that is literally impossible to work with. It is crazy. And that is why we're going to change to Parchment over here. So in the mappings channel, we're going to switch to Parchment right here. And then the version is actually going to be 2024.07.28-121. I know this because, well, on the Parchment website, which I'm of course which of course I'm going to also link. You can see 2024-07-28 and then 121. Now we still need to copy a couple of things. The first thing here is the Parchment Maven repository. We want to copy this line right here, right? And then we want to go back to the settings.gradle file, and below the Maven right here, we simply want to add this Maven as well. So we're going to add this line. In the build.gradle file, we then want to add this right here, the ID. There you go. And that's going to be added right here. And then you should be good to go. So those are the two things that we want to add. And then we need to use the correct version, basically. And once that is done, we can hit the little elephant over here. If that one does not appear, you can open the Gradle tab and hit reload all Gradle projects as well. And there you go. Now this is then going to actually download the Parchment for us, which is definitely going to be recommended. I can definitely tell you that. And once that is done, once again, it might take a couple of minutes, up to, let's say, a couple of minutes. Usually it should be a couple of seconds. And then once that is done, well, then we can proceed afterwards. So once again, stay patient until this is done. There we go. So we got it in build successful in 26 seconds. Absolutely awesome. One of the last things that's quite important for our setup is, let's say, for example, I were to go into any of the classes over here. So the build creative mode tab contents event, if I control left click on this, you can see this weird little blue bar right here. And that is because the sources are not yet correctly sort of added to this. What you can do is on the Gradle tab on the right, you can go to the download sources right here and you can download the sources. This shouldn't take too long. Most of the time, it should be quite quick. But once again, it might take a little while. So basically, once again, just let this run through. And once it's done, there you go, in 47 seconds. Once it's done, you can actually see the actual class already changed, right? I didn't even have to do anything. Once the sources were downloaded, basically it immediately changed. Absolutely fantastic. And now if I go into any vanilla class, what I should have is the proper everything, including some comments like these, right? Which are of course extremely valuable, right? If you want to hover over certain things and then you will understand how those things work. So that's quite important. Every time you update, you need to re-download the sources. So just keep that in mind. And as crazy as it sounds, this is everything we need for the basic setup. So at the right side, once again in Gradle, we can expand the tasks right here. Under Forge Gradle runs, we want to double click the run client over here, which is then going to be populated at the top right corner as well. And this is going to start the game for the first time. Now, if you are running this for the first time, it might take a couple of seconds longer than usual, but it shouldn't be, it shouldn't do this all the time, right? So once again, this time, like I said, the first time you get a lot of the different compile warnings and errors right here. Once again, totally normal. That is fine for the first time launching it. If you keep getting this every time you launch it, then I would be a little bit worried about it. But in this case, we should be good to go. And then there you go. After about a minute or so, now the game is launching and we'll hear inside of our ears the beautiful and awesome narrator in just a second. We'll of course not enable it. That's going to be totally fine. And there we frickin' go. And we're inside of Minecraft over here, 121 with Forge 55032 in this case. And you can see in the mods, we can see our tutorial mod Kaupenjoe, MIT license, a tutorial mod by Kaupenjoe for YouTube. Pretty freaking awesome. And that is the basic setup done. Nice. And now one more thing that is quite interesting, and that is it's optional, but it's highly recommended, and that is setting up a GitHub repository for your mod as well. Now, why do you want to do this? Well, this is highly recommended so that number one, you then save your project online. So if anything happens, for example, with your hard drive or anything like that, then you always have a working copy there. And secondly, it is really awesome for if you ever need help, right? So if you join the Discord server, for example, by the way, linked in the description below, of course, if you join that and you're ever running into any issues, supplying your GitHub repository is going to be so much easier than anything else. So for this, I highly recommend you simply go to github.com, also linked in the description below. You make an account. It is one of the most reputable sites out there. It is really awesome. It is really good, and it is completely free as well for all of the purposes that we're using it for. So just make an account, log in there, and then instead of IntelliJ, what you do is you go to version control, share project on GitHub right here, and you can see a repository name. In this case, I'm just going to choose that one. That's fine. And then I'm going to keep it private. In most of your cases, you want to simply make it public. Yes, that means that your code is accessible by, pretty much everyone. But in this case, I'm going to keep it private for the time being. But now I'm going to then go to add account right here, log in via GitHub, and it's as easy as then basically if you're logged into the browser, then simply hit authorize in GitHub. You've been successfully authorized, and then in IntelliJ you can see now I can share this on github.com/Kaupenjoe. So I simply hit share over here. It's going to do a couple of things. The names over here of certain files will turn red. That is absolutely normal. No worries there at all. That simply means that they now have to be added to your next commit. I will add those. This will immediately get pushed, right? So we're now pushing this onto GitHub. So it's now on GitHub. And if I click the link on the bottom left or on the bottom right corner, you can see now on github.com, there is the Forge tutorial 121x. Pretty freaking cool. If I modify anything, so let's say I add a very important comment, you can see that the class name over here changed to blue. That means that there has been a modification within this class. If you delete or add a class, then it can also turn green or red. Once again, that is totally fine. An error appears as an underline, as you can see, right? So a red underline is an error, but the name turning red, that is a GitHub thing or a Git thing. That is totally fine. So then we can go to commit. If we have some changes, we can note those. We can say very important changes. And we can hit commit over here. And then at the top over here, you can see that a little green arrow appears, because basically the commit, right, committing changes basically just says, okay, we're going to keep those in mind, right? So this would be, you know, let's say putting them into a folder. And then if we push them, right, now we're actually sending it, right, as a high level overview, right? The first step, like committing is putting it into the envelope, and then pushing it, right, is actually pushing it onto GitHub. You will always get some amount of warnings over here. That's just going to be Minecraft modding. There's just no way around that. So we can simply push anyways. And if I were to switch back to GitHub now and reload this, what you'll find is that very important changes have been basically committed and changed and pushed onto GitHub. Absolutely freaking awesome. Right, and that is it for this tutorial. Next time in this video, we'll talk about custom items. Hope to see you there. So, yeah.